Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Disability Landscape. I'm Charlie Brose. With me today, of course, is our regular co-host, is Mark Knutson. And Mark, why don't you tell the lovely folks who our great guest is today?
Well, we're pretty excited because we've got someone, I think a lot of you will, you probably have heard the name mentioned. And me and Charlie are envious, and maybe hopefully he can give us some pointers, because he's been behind the microphone a lot more than we have, but then we can give him pointers because, well, he's just now lately is in a wheelchair, so we can trade experiences. His radio experience, we can trade them in with some of the wheelchair experience. But I'm talking, what I want to bring on is from the Staci and Moon show. Moon, welcome to Disability Landscape.
Well, thanks for having me, but let me flip that around. It was Moon and Staci.
Oh, sorry. You know, that I wanted to say that, and that's what I thought, but I'm not sure why I did the Staci Moon.
It wasn't that one of us was the boss. It was that it was in alphabetical order.
Well, you know, and like with me and Charlie, I tell Charlie, I think first of all, I think it should be Mark and Charlie, just because I'm older than Charlie, and plus it plays well with Mark or Charlie. MC.
Absolutely.
You know, we're the MC, so.
Well, glad to have you guys invite me on, and whatever you want to know, I'm an open book.
Yeah. Well, let's first start off with the typical media, no matter if it's TV or radio. In the beginning, you guys always do a bunch of, how many different radio stations were you at before you ended up at KS95?
A whole bunch of them. Started in my hometown, KSID, Sidney, Nebraska. Left there, went to KMMJ, Grand Island, Nebraska. Left there, went back to KSID in Sidney, Nebraska. Left there, went back to KRGI in Grand Island, Nebraska. Left there, went to KOGA, Ogallala, Nebraska. Left there, went to KQ and KLNG, Omaha. Left there, went to KRXY in Denver, Colorado. Left there, went to KS104, Denver, Colorado. Left there, went to KMZQ, Las Vegas, Nevada. Left there, went to KHMX, Houston, Texas. Left there, KSTP, Minneapolis, St. Paul. So been a lot of stops. Started when I was 16 years old. My family and my friends used to listen to me while they were having breakfast, and on their very short 1-minute commute in my small hometown of 5,000 people. And in radio, what happens is you're broke for a very, very long time until you get to a big city and into a drive time position. I used to listen to my dad's radio on his tractor, and when I would hear that, I would be driving around in circles all day doing what farmers do. And I thought, man, when I listen to these guys on the radio, I'm thinking I should do that. And eventually an opportunity came up when I was in high school. They put a little note on our bulletin board that a job opening was going to happen over the holidays, where the full-time employees could take Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's off with their families, and they would just have dopey high school kids run tapes. And our big moment to shine was by giving the station ID, and that was the only time we got to speak. And anyway, after about, 6 months, they ended up letting me do the night show. And after a couple of months of that, I ended up doing the morning show. So I've done mornings, middays, afternoons, nights, and all nights. My career just wrapped up 1 year ago, and I've been on the air for 45 years. I'm lucky enough to, it hasn't even happened yet, but I've been invited to join the Minnesota Broadcasting Hall of Fame. They had to cancel everything for COVID, and they keep backing that thing up. I hope it's not a posthumous award by the time I try to get mine.
Yeah.
And
I hope not either.
So anyway, I've had a blast. I've worked with great, talented people in both radio and TV. I've interviewed, presidents, Michelle Obama, and, every known comedian known to man, and, movie stars and rock stars. And, it was just such a wonderful, fun career. And I guess if I had to do it over again, and I've said this before, I would do everything exactly the way I did it this time, with the exception of the chronic illness I have, which is multiple sclerosis.
Right, yeah.
So that's a little background.
Who would you say of everyone that you've interviewed, who was the one that struck you the most, as far as really your heart was pounding and you were real nervous and wondering, how in the heck am I going to get through this interview? You probably had a couple of them at least. I
did. The first one was an attorney named Shapiro that was involved in the Simpson murder trial.
Right. Yeah.
He made me really nervous. Elton John was a little nerve-wracking. And Don Henley. Don's kind of a grumpy guy.
Okay.
Michelle Obama was a joy. The Hulk, right? He was great. There have been a couple that were not so nice. There was one of the new kids on the block that wanted to punch me in the head because I wouldn't play a song. But I mean, over the years, we had the opportunity to talk to, I got a little nervous when I talked to Oprah. Any of those people that have just one name like Bono or Oprah.
Right, yeah.
That starts to freak you out a little bit.
Elton is, I'm a big Elton fan, and I'd almost be tempted right now but I'm sure you probably already washed your hand once you shook his hand. I'd almost be willing to come over to see where you're at. Well, I can't shake your hand because of COVID either, so.
Yeah. Here's an Elton John story. This is the first time I met him. There was a brand new amphitheater that had been built in Denver, Colorado called Fiddler's Green, and it seated about 19,000 people. And I was invited to go out before the show and kind of try to get the crowd revved up for the opening act before Elton. So I was there at 5 o'clock drinking beer backstage. And I went out on the stage to try and figure out where I was going to be and what I was going to say. And while I was out there, Elton John was filming a video that night, and they had certain marks on the floor of the stage so that he would go into those areas for best film opportunities, photo ops and video stuff. And so while I'm standing there looking out at this empty stadium, here comes Elton John with another dude. And I thought, man, I got to say something. And I go, yo, Elton, it's Moon. And he looked at me, and he came walking over, and he shook my hand. And we talked for about 3 or 4 minutes. I said, yeah, how's the life? The tour is great. Love your new song. How's life? He's a big baseball fan, likes the Atlanta Braves. So we had this 5-minute conversation. And finally, he said to me, he goes, Moon, he goes, for some reason, I can't remember where we've met. And I said, we've never met, right? And so anyway, at that point, he called security, and I was evacuated. And that was the end of that. Yeah, he was quite an interview. But that was the thing, I could get up in the morning and know later today I'm going to talk to Ellen DeGeneres and we didn't have big stars on all the time. We found out that in radio, a lot of times interviews can be bad for ratings. People either don't know the person you're talking to or don't care. And so
that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, they think they know, how radio works, but really behind the scenes, it's crazy. There's a lot more work to sit in there for 4 hours or 5 hours in my case.
Yeah.
And just trying to, fill time. It takes a lot of prep work. That was one of the things when I retired. My MS had advanced to the point where In August of last year, I had 21 doctor's visits in the month of August before the state fair started. And at that point in time, I had to work the state fair, every other day. And,
Right.
taking my wheelchair through 150,000 people is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
You
That's
know,
why I
you-
only go once every 10 years.
And this is a disability thing I would like to bring up, and I don't know what your feelings are on this, but I feel that when people are in a mobility scooter in a large crowd near a stadium for a rock show or a football game or whatever, that people do not pay as much attention to somebody in a mobility scooter as they do someone in a wheelchair. And what I've noticed is that people, when you're on a mobility scooter, almost look at you as if you're lazy, where people look at you in a wheelchair and they almost look at you as if you're injured. And so you get a little bit more respect.
I think you're absolutely, I think you're absolutely right, especially with the mobility scooter, because individuals are thinking that, like you said, that the individual is just being lazy or tired and is using the scooter, where for some reason they think you have to be in a wheelchair to actually prove that you're actually disabled. That's like for mine and Charlie's situation, we kind of have the advantage because we don't have any legs. So it's pretty obvious. Yeah. These people aren't disabled. They're not hiding their they're not hiding their legs or anything like that. But like you said, because of if you're in a mobility scooter. Now, Charlie, you go around sometimes either in your wheelchair or you use a mobility scooter. But like I said, Charlie, you don't have any legs, so it's pretty obvious for you, correct?
Oh, very much so. Yes, I do use the scooter though because I am lazy, but that's not the point. I still need it
Right.
because,
I didn't want to
walking
say
still
that, but
yeah.
Another thing I get the biggest kick out of, hold on, my wife's getting some light. One of the things I really, I get disturbed by, and that is the way that some buildings are designed and not ADA friendly. Many times I go into a rehabilitation place for physical therapy and other procedures, and they say they have handicapped bathrooms or accessible bathrooms, and you can't even get your chair turned around in there. And one of my favorite places, I won't name it by name, but they have automatic doors on your way into the rehab facility, but as you leave, they put the disability door opening button like 17 feet tall. And, people in a wheelchair that don't have a wheelchair that'll raise up to be,
right.
they're never going to be able to use it. And sometimes I get upset with, people not thinking through their cutouts for their sidewalks where they have
the
a
curb
business.
cuts.
Yeah, where you want to go in and do business with them, but you can't get there unless you go to the end of the block. There's a lot of challenges that we all have to face, when you have a disability, and, there are different levels of disability, and there's different levels of poorly managed properties.
I mean, there are a lot of accessible bathrooms are great if you're in a smaller manual chair like Mark and I are in, but if we're in a power chair, my wife uses a larger power chair. I'm sure you're using a power chair. They're not designed. The stalls are, you can barely get in them with the chair, and, half the time you have to leave the door open, and it's not a pleasant experience.
No, and I know that there are, people that are trying to do their best to make it better for people with disabilities. And I have heard many times of one attorney that goes to businesses, and what'll happen is if they're not ADA compliant, then he will send them a letter on official lawyer letterhead or whatever, and
Right.
basically tell him to, hey, fix this for us, would you please? And if not, he files suit. And he's gotten a lot of things done. And,
Yeah.
a lot of people say that's like being an ambulance chaser or whatever. But, for me, it's a representative because I run into those struggles all the time. And, I hope that we can find champions like that that'll help us because it's needed.
Yep.
Right, because the like you were saying with the curb cuts, what drives me crazy at times is here again, I'm not going to mention any names, but I know of some medical facilities. I'll just leave it at that. But when, but when you go to park, what I find interesting is the best situation is when you go to park and you got your vehicles is to have the curb cut right in front of the vehicle so you can get onto the sidewalk right away, because in the wintertime, the sidewalks at a business are generally plowed pretty well. But if they don't have the curb cuts there, a lot of times what you end up doing, they have the curb cut way down at the other end. So you got to go wheel behind all the other cars, which means you're now wheeling in the parking lot with all that slush and snow. And for me and Charlie, we're low stature type individuals. We don't play the power forward in a wheelchair basketball. We're more like the small guards. So when Charlie and I go behind a vehicle, we just hope they see us back there. I know, and I'm sure Charlie does the same thing too. Whenever I'm pulling up behind, if I have to go behind a vehicle and I know someone's in there getting ready to back up, I always have my hand ready because I'm worried they're not going to see me if they start backing up.
Oh,
I'm going to start doing a big drum roll on their trunk or whatever. So
yeah, hopefully, people will learn, from broadcasts like this that, help is needed. I know the ADA's out there trying to do their thing too. And we all got to get through this COVID stuff first. Right. And, for me, this was strange because, I have a heated garage at my house. And when I went to work, I was also allowed a heated garage spot there. So it helped me to work the last couple of years in my power chair. Otherwise, I would have had to give it up because it's not safe for me to be in a power chair in snow and ice. It just isn't. I mean, even when I try to get your chair back into your van or whatever, it gets really dicey. And so anyway, last winter, I had a motorcycle that I hadn't ridden in a couple of years. And so I sold the motorcycle. It was fully hand-controlled motorcycle.
Is that the three-wheeler?
That was my three-wheel Goldwing trike. It was beautiful. And it was only a foot shorter than my SUV. The thing was massive. It had a V6 engine. I mean, it was 1,800 pounds without me on it. And I took that thing all over the country. I had a handicap plate on it. My shifting, since I couldn't use my left foot, was on the hand controls. My braking, since I couldn't use my right foot. Yeah, I had all of this completely ADA adapted. And so for the last 2 years I rode it, I had to have my wife put me on the bike when I was leaving my house in Lakeville. And then when I got to the radio station, they had a couple of security officers there that liked donuts. So I slide them donuts and they'd load me in my wheelchair off my motorcycle. And that allowed me to ride for a couple of extra years. But since I hadn't been able to get on it without a Hoyer lift, and that right there is probably a clue you might want to think about riding. But sold the bike, went to Florida for the first time this last year, and used my bike money to miss the snow. And I wish I had another bike because it was pretty amazing until COVID hit and spring break and all that.
Oh boy, me and Charlie saw, we saw the bike, the pictures of you on the bike, And now I am pretty jealous because I assumed it was before, your MS. And I didn't realize it was all adapted for hand controls. Now knowing that, we're pissed. We would like to have driven it. Oh my God. We could have jumped on it, me and Charlie.
Well, and that was the thing. I mean, if I could get on it, I could ride it.
Right.
And it was great. And when I sold it, I actually put an ad on Craigslist that, said, hey, this bike is meant for a disabled rider. And I said, if you, are not disabled, you can take the parts off that I've added. But I'd really like to see this go to somebody that needs it. And, the shifter I bought was from England, and it had actually been used in a Batman movie, right? It was pretty cool. Yeah, that was that was $1,800, and then the brakes were called Clicktronic brakes, I think, and I ordered them out of another state, and that was about $2,000 by the time they were installed. So I mean, I put a lot extra in it so I can continue to ride it. And there is a rider here in Lakeville that I see every once in a while who has a Harley, and behind the Harley, where the normal rear tire would be, he's got a trailer. So he just rolls his wheelchair right into the trailer. And, when he shuts the gate of the trailer, it keeps him secure, and he can reach his handlebars and his clutch and all that. And off he goes. He's a huge Vikings fan. He wears purple all the time. The bike's purple. It's pretty sweet.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've got a friend who is in a wheelchair, but he can stand up enough to get out of his chair and get onto his bike. And what he's able to do is he's able to stand up long enough where he can take his wheelchair, put it behind the bike. He's got a little carrier system. He straps it on there, and then he walks around and gets on the bike. And here again, I'm kind of pissed at him because it's all foot control. And I told him, you just do this on purpose so us wheelchair guys can't ride your bike. And he says, you got that right, Mark. I know us wheelchair guys,
Yeah.
So when did you start noticing then, with the MS, and it just kind of step us through how you kind of noticed and that?
What happened was in 2005, I started having triple vision out of my right eye. So when I was at a stop sign, I would see 3 cars to my right instead of 1. When
really?
I played golf, I would just swing at the middle ball. Right there. There were 3 of them. I'd swing at the middle, and then sometimes I hit it. But yeah, the vision thing was bad enough, and I'd been using, cheaters reading glasses. And so I went to an ophthalmologist, and he looked me over, and all of a sudden he closes the door and he says, you have either MS or a brain tumor, and you need a brain scan right now. And I was on my way to work. I was in Edina, and I had to be on the air at 2:00, and it's like 10 till 2. And I said, dude, I'm out of here. I'm going to work. And he goes, you seriously need a brain scan? I go, let me sign whatever I got to do to get you out of trouble. So I signed an agreement not to sue him. I drove to the station, got on Google and tried to figure out what MS was. Had a brain scan the very next morning. They found lesions on my brain and spine, and so that indicated MS. I thought the people in Minnesota were probably stupid, so that couldn't happen to me. So I called some people in Texas, and some people I used to play golf with, some doctors, and I said, hey, can you hook me up at a neuro down in Texas at the Med Center? And they said, yeah, and called me back 20 minutes later. Got you an appointment. When? Tomorrow. So I got my scan on like a Tuesday. I'm in Houston, Texas at the Med Center on Wednesday. Doctor agreed. The people in Minnesota aren't stupid. Yep, you got it. And while I'm sitting in his office, I get a phone call from my doctor up here, who actually got me an appointment and a week-long stay at the Mayo Clinic. So then I flew back from Houston. I had a seizure in the airport at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport.
Oh, you did?
That wasn't good. I was right at the end of the moving stairway, the moving
walkway,
elevator, walkway, and I got to the end of the walkway and I couldn't even do anything. I was frozen in time. I hit the end of the little runway and I just fell, and I couldn't move. People were walking over the top of me and everything else. Nobody would help me.
Yeah, welcome back to Minnesota.
I said, there's your Minnesota nice right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No kidding.
And so anyway, eventually went to the Mayo Clinic, later ended up at the Minneapolis Clinic of Neurology, and that's where I'm a patient now. I started with maybe 3 MS attacks a year that would take me out for a month or two. That progressed, and I had a major attack while I was actually on my motorcycle on 35E. I had to have an ambulance come and get me. That was not good.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's progressed. I'm under the current care of a home care nurse, a couple hours a day. When I got back from Florida earlier this year, I spent 63 days in the hospital with a couple of different infections. And so I'm glad to be home. I don't go anywhere. I don't do anything. I have made a couple of appearances on shows like this, and I enjoy it. And I hope that, something I said might have, made people feel something, either, that I really appreciate you guys even having me on. I do miss being on the air. That was my passion. I said taking my microphone away was like taking away one of Prince's guitars. Yeah. And I wouldn't have quit if it weren't for my health, but here we are. And, I'm still living life, and I'm just finding different ways to enjoy my life.
Yep. So we've noticed that you do have one of those lovely can-do canines as well.
I do.
How big a help is your helper dog? I mean, he's got to be a godsend. Oh,
yeah. Well, let me tell you, when I got Ritz from Can-Do Canines a number of years ago, I didn't want a dog, but, somebody talked me into having her. And eventually, after a lot of training for both of us, she ended up at my house. I did take her to work every day pretty much for the first year. And as that time went on, my disability became more prevalent, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And because of that, it was getting pretty hard for me to get her in and out of the van. I mean, I could do okay with it, but I left her. I started leaving her at home a little bit. And then what she does for me now, it's really super cool. She sits around my house and listens for me to drop things. And then she comes and picks them up and gives them to me. She still, when we take her out, she can still open handicap doors. If my feet weren't wrapped with 37 rolls of compression tape, she used to take my socks off and all that. She can take my shoes off. And she's very well trained, and service dogs are amazing. Taking her on an airplane, she doesn't get as much work now as she used to, and she's an older dog now too. And actually, I met the guy that used to own her before me. He listened to me on the air talking about my dog and sent me an email saying, I used to own your dog, and is there any way that I could see her? And I said, sure. So I went over to the guy's house. He happened to live in Lakeville, and that's where I'm from. And I went over to the guy's house, and he's a quadriplegic. And I said, I don't mean to be forward, but, what's going on with your health? And he said, a lot of people take flu shots. And he said, every 1 out of every 3 million doses causes transverse myelitis. And I am a quadriplegic because of a flu shot. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I've never heard that one before.
Yep, I had that. Let me shut my phone off.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Probably a political call.
Right. I was getting some during the interview here too. Sure. I was looking, I'm like, oh crap. One question I would like to get in, because our time is kind of running short as I see.
Okay.
When did you make the decision, and how to finally decide to let your audience know about your disability?
I waited a long time because people don't understand MS, and it's different for everybody.
Right.
So I waited probably almost 8 years of having MS before I said it on the air. I surprised a lot of people when I did that, but it was very obvious at my appearances and things that I was not, I would go from a cane to a mobility scooter and wheelchair. So we talked about it on the air. And then at that point in time, I was able to do more fundraising for the MS Society, which has always been one of my favorite batches of people. And I've done a lot of charitable work before, and I've got some great connections and Can Do Canines and, Susan G. Komen Foundation for the Race for the Cure. There's a lot of good people out there that need some help.
Yeah, because we're going to be talking with we're going to be having an interview with Can Do Canines.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. Here too.
Yeah, it is. It's a greater organization and stuff like that. Charlie, is there anything you want to say before you want to wrap us up here?
No, I think it's been great to talk to Moon. Great, thank you for sharing your story with our audience. MS is a terribly progressive disease, and it's got to be a little difficult to kind of deal with it on a day-to-day basis. But we all do what we have to do to get from here to there.
Medical cannabis. Hello.
Right there you go. Well, thank you again. Thanks again, Moon. And I'm glad I like I said, I know your old producer, Tiffany Norton. I go around and I do open mics and stand up, and that's how I know Tiffany. So I reached out to her, and she's, oh, no problem. I'll get a hold of Moon. I'll let him know.
Oh yeah.
So I'm glad this worked out. So thanks again, Moon.
Okay, you guys have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much. All right. I've been Charlie Brose. He's been Mark Knudsen. Our special guest today was Moon from KS95. Thank you again for watching. We'll check you next time.